My name's Rusty McClure. I'm here in the Crosley mansion. My great uncle was Powel Crosley Jr. His younger brother was my grandfather, my mother's father, Louis Crosley. I knew both brothers. I knew my grandfather better than I knew my great uncle because he was my grandfather, my maternal grandfather, and because my maternal grandfather lived until I was 28, and his older brother, Powel, the entrepreneur, passed away when I was 11. This is a fabulous story about two brothers who are very different, who grew up in Cincinnati, who accomplished many things. And in addition to the tour of the house we're going to take, we're going to tour them and their lives. Two brothers, one older by 2 years, Powel. His younger brother, Louis, is a graduate civil engineer. So you have these two brothers who are each other's best friends, business partners, and that's how our story in this Seagate mansion that was Powell's starts. Powell, who has Louis, ends up being the largest producer of radios in the world. WLW will become the most powerful ever radio station in the world. They will take the Crosley car to the 1939 World's Fair. They end up owning the Cincinnati Reds, and they will win the World Series, and they will help America win World War II with their inventions and their productivity. So the beginning of the story, the Crosley Corporation story that launches the Seagate story, the wealth, the fame, is when Powell, who has already established, and the Crosley brothers for that matter, have already established a company, live in a neighborhood where the kid down the street has a toy. And Powell's young son, 9-year-old Powell III, goes on a sleepover overnight like people do today and comes back saying, I want the toy the kid down the street has. Father and son go to the only store in Cincinnati that manufactures hand-built, one at a time, radios. And they want $135 for a hand-built radio. Now, we estimate that the American Automobile Accessories Company, owned by Powell, is worth $2 to $3 million, 1921. He could afford a $135 toy for his kid that the neighbor kid had and decides that he will not do that. And he stomps out with a pamphlet, a 25-cent pamphlet on how to build a radio. 2 days later, he has assembled the parts and he has a thought, two thoughts. The first thought is, I was right. There's no $135 worth of stuff here. His second thought is, this is not a kid's toy. This is the next great thing. So he gets his brother and he says, we're going to go to the University of Cincinnati and hire some engineers, and we are going to reverse engineer this radio into a manufacturing product. And in 2 years, they have established how to build, mass produce a $10 radio. The Automotive Accessories Company has a national presence selling accessories for automobiles. And that's where Powell really gets his start in the automotive business. So 2 years into the journey of figuring out how to build a $10 radio, they now have 65, 70 prototypes. And within a year, 1 million orders for radios have come into the Flatiron Building on Blue Rock Avenue in Cincinnati, Ohio. And Powell Crosley Jr. looked at his younger brother, Louis, and said, I caught him, you clean him. So now, my grandfather, Louis Crosley, sits down to figure out how to build the first assembly line in the history of radio. He gets a license, Powell does. He finds out even back then he has to go to the government to get a license, and ultimately the license for that radio station will be WLW in Cincinnati, Ohio. Powell Crosley Jr. was considered the Henry Ford of radio, but the truth is he was the Bill Gates of radio. They just didn't know who Bill Gates was yet. But what Bill Gates did was the connectivity, well, the first mass connectivity with the population in the history of the world is Crosley radio. People lined up like they do at the Apple store today to get the new radio because they were in isolated rural environments, and now they had an entertainment system that they could buy for $10. And if you're the person in charge of that, you make Bill Gates kind of money. Along the way, Powell has the grasshopper mind about what to do with himself and his wealth. So the first thing he does is build a very large mansion just outside their boyhood home, which is College Hill, just outside of Cincinnati. And the money just keeps rolling in. So, because Bob Ringling, the son of the key Ringling who built the Ringling Mansion, invites him, Powell, to come down and fish for tarpon here in Sarasota. Powell accepts and fights a fish for just under an hour and reels in a large tarpon and decides that was as much fun as he should be allowed to have. And Ringling tells him that there is a piece of property, a subdivision, just north of Cartizan. The general contractor is Paul Bergman. Bergman will work overtime for those 3, 6, 8 months to get this done incredibly quickly at huge expense in a period of time when the logistics are much more difficult than they are today. This is not a off the superhighway interstate system place back in 1929. The vision for the house can best be understood if you go see the original mansion, Pinecroft. The beams, if you look at the floor here in the main living room area, dining room area, and then the bathrooms, you will see Rookwood pottery-esque tiling. You will also see the Mediterranean style architecture that is influenced by this Tudor Stuart of the mansion in Cincinnati. The carved beams with the inlaid colors are clearly not Cincinnati, but if you see both 11,000 square feet mansions, and if you walk around them, you can really tell that the mind of Powell Crosley was happy with both. His brother, when he came to one of these places, Seagate was the first one, 65 acres. They went out and did hunting and fishing, horseback riding, boating, whatever they did, wherever they were, and they did it on Powell's guidance. Powell paid for it, and this was the younger brother's reward. So I walk the halls here, and I feel this presence of this greatness. All I am is the conduit for the story they can't tell. There are a few people in this world that are visionary. And visionary are people who can see around a corner. You know, the rest of us, we can see out there and we see the future. We think that's cool. Visionary leaders can lead people around corners. And now we're talking about really, really few number of people. That's who these people are.